Hello. Welcome back to the Lifelong Guitarist Podcast. I'm your host, Andre Flood. And today I want to talk to you about why I believe learning guitar as an adult, why starting at an older age, why getting better at an older age, we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60 even, why I believe this is great, and some advantages I think the older guitar players have over the teens and tweens and whatnot. So you click on this video, you probably already have it in your mind because this is what society tells us, that in order to get good at anything, but something especially like music, you have to start really young. And there are some misconceptions about prodigies and great players and things like that that kind of lead us to this false idea that the younger you start, the better you will become. So let's talk about that first before we get into why I think it's better to learn as an adult. So I pulled up a few ages of some guitar players you probably know. If we start on my list here, we have the guitarist Slash from Guns N' Roses, of course. He started at age 14. Joe Satriani started at age 14. Steve Vai started at age 11. Paul Gilbert started at age 9. So these are all guitar players that are really fantastic. And generally speaking, they started between the ages of 9 and 16. And this is probably when most guitar players start playing guitar. Now, if you didn't know, these guitar players are, of course, exceptionally talented, but none of them are prodigies. There's a different level of fluency and connection with guitar you immediately hear when you hear a prodigy play. So I have three standard prodigies that I always refer to: Tommy Emmanuel, Julian Lage, Guthrie Govan. And if we look at their ages, Tommy Emmanuel started at age 4, Guthrie started at age 3, Julian Lage started at age 4 or 5. So we see prodigies, they all start around age 4 or 5 or younger. We see the other category, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, etc., who are great guitar players but not prodigies. They start at around age 10 to 16. And so when you see these numbers, it's easy to assume that the strategy to become an exceptional guitar player is just to start really young. The younger you start, the better you will get. But this is not true whatsoever. We have a few outliers here who are really skewing our statistics. So let's unpack this a little bit further. I have known many musicians who started at the age of 4 or 5 throughout music school and friends and all of that stuff. The vast majority of them don't become prodigies. Guys, in case you forgot, it's not about being a prodigy. It's about being a lifelong guitarist. So most prodigies, if not all prodigies, start at a very young age, but most people who start at a very young age don't become prodigies. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that we talk about this second category of age, between age 9 and 16 or so. This is just statistically speaking when most people start to play the guitar. So if we're drawing from this giant pool of people on the planet Earth who all started at this age, then it's always going to be that most people who are talented and famous will come from that age range. It's just a matter of numbers. But if you ever want to see the truth about how talented average people get, if we forget the famous people, and even if we forget the non-famous professionals, walk into a Guitar Center on a Saturday, or better yet, walk into a Guitar Center around 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. You get a lot of people who are adults who have day jobs who will stop by and check out some gear. This happens. I see this all the time. Look for someone who is looking for a somewhat expensive guitar, someone who's probably in their mid to late 30s, if not 40s or 50s. And when you hear them play guitar, they're usually pretty good, but they're not Joe Satriani, Steve Vai good. And they clearly have been playing guitar for most of their life. Another really revealing example is if you go to an average music school. So I'm not talking about Berklee College of Music. I'm not talking about the Musicians Institute. I'm just talking about your average music school in a random state. And you listen to the guitar players play who are graduating from that school. They're usually good, but they're not famous touring guitarist good, statistically speaking. So just to wrap up this point, just because you start guitar in your 10 to 16-year-old range doesn't mean you're going to become great. In fact, the vast majority of people who start at that age also don't get exceptionally good. And here is the thing that actually happens with guitar players, no matter what age you start, as long as you're not a prodigy. Now, let me just quickly mention this one thing. If your goal is to become a prodigy, then no. You can't start guitar at the age of 40 and become the next Tommy Emmanuel. I mean, even if you're very talented and start guitar at the age of 10, you probably won't become Tommy Emmanuel. So, yeah. But chances are, if you're watching this video and you're older, you probably already know that because you're older, you're wiser, all of that stuff. So this is what actually happens when it comes to learning the guitar. Whether you start at 5 or 6, 16 or 17, 20 or 25, the vast majority of guitar players who don't quit in the first 6 months to a year, they all get to this one particular level. And I have named this level the pre-intermediate iceberg. Some guitar players start at age 12, and by age 13, they get to this level. Some start at age 13 and get to here by age 18. But the point being is, after about 1 to 5 years of playing, depending on who you are, how much you practice, all of that stuff, guitar players get to this level where they can play any song on the radio, right? They can go on Ultimate Guitar, they can find the chord progression to any song, and they can play it pretty easily. They can probably solo a little bit with the pentatonic scale. They may even know the major scale, and they can mix a little bit of major and minor sounds in a bluesy kind of a thing. They can solo over a blues. This is pretty much where everyone gets to. They know all their bar chords. They might know a couple of seventh chords, okay? But they can't play through changes. Like, they can't nail the changes in a rock song. They don't have a very strong understanding of how theory works. They lack fretboard visualization. They might have a couple of flashy licks, but they lack fluency with navigating in any type of continuous way on the guitar. They struggle to play slightly more difficult songs. This is the level that most people get to. And if you get here at age 14, you're probably going to stay here for most of your guitar life, just statistically speaking. Mm-hmm. If you start at age 5, you might get here at age 7, and then you're going to stay here for the rest of your life. The guitar players who we hear in records, the guitar players who we listen to and go, wow, they're really talented. The thing that sets them apart is that they were able to get through the pre-intermediate iceberg. By the way, if you like these more relaxed, chilled kind of conversations, definitely sign up for the Lifelong Guitarist Newsletter, link below. That comes out every single Saturday, and we have a lot of fun talks like this. Again, totally free, and it's linked below. Now, the one advantage that I definitely see that younger learners have is that they have more time. And the reason time is so important is because, and I hate to say this, but most guitar teachers aren't great teachers. And so most people who actually get past the pre-intermediate iceberg, they get past that level by just having more time to make mistakes, to fumble around on the guitar, to kind of figure out the best path forward. And this can take 10, 15, 20 years. But again, the reason it's taking so long is because people don't have the right instruction on how to get past this phase. And here's another big part, and this is not good or bad, it's just the truth of the world we live in. For certain activities, the world is structured for children to succeed more so than adults. As a very easy example, as adults, when we pick where we're going to live, if we have children, oftentimes we think to ourselves, well, what's going to be a good neighborhood for my child? What's going to be a good school district for my child? If you think about things like sports, baseball, wrestling even, a lot of these programs only exist for children or teens, not for adults in their 40s, as another example. And again, when it comes to learning music, we have a lot of the same thing. Not only are most people more experienced with teaching children, but the methods and the way we teach, the way you learn to teach when you go to college is really designed for children. If you look at how someone teaches a child to play guitar, a lot of the things we have to do are focused on things like attention span, on keeping the person interested, on keeping them focused, giving all of these different things are made for children. And adults can learn with the same methods, but adults will learn much faster if they have a program or methods that are designed specifically for them. And this is why I focus so hard on creating methods and programs for adult learners. And of course, we could talk about things like neuroplasticity, and there's some people who say, and there's science to say that you learn more efficiently when you're younger, and this changes as you get older and all of this stuff. But here's the truth of the matter. I have seen many young people who are not very good at learning or processing information. And I have met people in their 50s and 60s who are extremely sharp and very able to improve at things that they do in their life, including guitar. And the other thing to understand is that the level we're trying to get to is not Julian Lage. If your goal is to play through changes, to have a little bit of technique, to understand how to navigate the fretboard, to play a little bit more difficult songs, you just need the right structure, the right method, and the right way to actually get to this stage. And here's the thing. In my experience, when you give an adult learner the right structure and the right guidance and the right method, they tend to get better faster than teenagers. And this is why I think it's better, statistically speaking, why it's better to learn things like guitar as an adult. Quick side tangent before we get to some of my actual points for why it's better to learn as an adult. Back when I was teaching music courses at Montclair State University, every once in a while you would get an adult learner, someone who's in their like 30s or 40s. Montclair State University is a really big school for education, so it's very common for someone to go back a little bit later in life to get a certification, or they go back later in life to get further education and so on. And without exception, anytime you have a student in your class who is older than the age of 35, they are one of the best students in the class. That's always been my experience. Now I'm in McCulley's Honors College in Manhattan, and the same thing holds true. Every once in a while, we get someone who is an adult, in their 30s or 40s. And when we see their work, when we see their presentations, when we see them at different common events, they do really, really well. And I think the same thing is true for guitar. So let's talk about it. By the way, this is also why I really love teaching adults because, well, here, let's just get into it. The first thing that adult learners have as an advantage is that they are more patient than younger learners. There's this very famous saying, I don't know who it's attributed to, but it's something along the lines of humans overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and dramatically underestimate what they can achieve in 3 years. And if that's true for most humans, then Teenagers dramatically overestimate what they can achieve in 2 weeks and dramatically underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years. The thing that is difficult with teaching younger people is that they tend to want everything right away. And as a teacher, it's really difficult to get a 16-year-old or 17-year-old or even a 20-year-old to just slow down. Slow down. Let's actually master this material. If we spend 6 months on this topic, you will have this down so well that for the rest of your life, you just never have to worry about it. Try getting a teenager to do that. They're going to try to cram everything they possibly can into the next 6 days instead of working on it for 6 months. And generally speaking, because they tend to work that way, you have to go over the same things over and over and over and over, and it actually just slows down their process. After 3 years of working with them, you find them struggling to do the same things they would have been able to do if they have dedicated 6 months to it early on. Now, when it comes to teaching adults, I very rarely find this happen. If you get an adult guitar player who's ready to learn and they're eager and they're excited and they're mature, 30, 35, 40, 50, 55, whatever. I have students right now who are in their 60s in my guitar program. When you get one of them and you say to them, listen, we have to be patient. It's going to take you at least 2 or 3 weeks on this one topic before you master it. They're like, 2 weeks? That's all? I thought it was going to take a year to understand this one thing. And when you have that type of mindset and that type of dedication to being patient with your progress, you actually master material and you get closer to getting through these giant hurdles that musicians struggle to get through. So the first big advantage for adult learners, patient. The second giant advantage, which is related to this, a lot of these ideas are all related to each other, but adults tend to already know how to learn. And this is what I mean. We all learn in different ways. Some of us are better auditory learners. Some of us are better visual learners. Some people actually need different systems and structures to help them understand things. Some need to see a lot of examples. Some need repetition. But no matter how you learn best, by the time you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you already figured that out for the most part throughout your life in different things. And so I can sit down with an adult learner and say to them, well, when it comes to other things in your life, like when it comes to your job, when it comes to other things you've improved in at life, what was your best methods forward? Right. And they can say, well, I'm the type of person who needs to study with a lot of different examples, a lot of different books. Someone else can say, well, I'm someone who needs to just drill in material over and over and over and get repetition on it, right? Whatever the case may be, they tend to already know that. And so we can get right down to figuring out the best plan forward for that person and get right to work. When you're teaching younger people, you're often trying to diagnose the best way that they learn. And the other interesting thing about it is that this can actually change while you're in the process of teaching them, which makes things even more confusing and a bit more complicated, and sometimes for them a bit more frustrating. So a large part of your time spent with someone who's younger can be spent just trying to figure out what's going to work for their unique brain. Whereas when you sit down with an adult, they usually figured that out already, and they usually can just tell you intuitively with words, this is how I excel, this is going to be good for me. And then as a teacher, I can say, okay, well, if this is how you get better, let me break down this plan for you, and this is how we're going to work together. So it's much more efficient, and it's a bit easier as a teacher as well. The other thing that is very fun when it comes to working with adult guitar players is that they tend to already know what they want. And by the way, guys, if you're younger and you're listening to this, don't feel bad. I'm not talking down on you. And you have your whole life to get over me talking about this stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, adult learners tend to already know what they want. And I'll give you two examples. I get emails from people all the time asking for advice about how to improve on guitar and all of these different things. And whenever it's a younger person, it'll be an email with a long, very, very long list of examples from all different types of things that have no real connection. And that's totally fine, right? This is music. We don't need to stay in one genre for our whole life. We don't need to only have one influence. There's nothing wrong with having diverse influences, diverse songs, and all of that stuff. But when someone sits down and says to you, okay, I want to work on my flamenco picking, and I also want to play like Tim Henson, and I need to work on my Eric Clapton blues style stuff. By the way, I also want to learn 7-string guitar, and I want to work on my metal tone, and my down picking needs work by also. I am a decent sweep picker, but I actually don't. It's like there's just so many different things, and it's clear that that person has a lot of passion and excitement, but they don't have a clear idea of how all of these things fit together. When you talk to an older guitar player, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they're like, listen, I want to be able to play over a jazz standard. I don't want to be able to shred over it. I just want to be able to make the changes, playing some simple ideas over it. I would also like to be able to improvise better in rock. And so as a guitar teacher, I can go, okay, so you want to learn how to nail the changes, and you want to be able to nail the changes in rock and in jazz. And they'll just go, yeah, that's what I want to. That's what I want to do. I go with my friends once a month, and we jam in jazz. And then I have stuff that I like to do by myself with rock, and I want to just get great at those two different things. And as a teacher, that's really, really easy for me to then help them achieve fairly efficiently. Again, with the younger person, I have to piece together, okay, how do I structure a practice routine? How do I structure a path that's going to involve nylon string flamenco picking, which I'm not even very good at myself, but how am I going to help them with that and their down picking? I don't even play 7 or 8-string guitar. I barely know a Tim Henson song. How am I going to put all of these things together in a way that makes sense for this guitar player when they're not really sure how it makes sense for them? So again, adult learners usually know exactly what they want. Another thing that's related to this is that expectations are also more realistic. And, one thing about younger people is that, and this is a beautiful thing about younger people, but the world and experiences haven't yet taught them what life is actually going to be like, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. I encourage everyone to dream big. But I kid you not. I do get emails from people who say things like, Andre, just like you, I love metal, I love jazz, I like all these different genres of music. My big goal is to play like Tommy Emmanuel and also like John Petrucci. Oh, by the way, I'm starting med school in 3 years once I finish my undergraduate degree. Or by the way, I also I do coding. And I have about an hour a day to practice or so. And it's like, okay, well, most guitar players on the planet want to play like Tommy Emmanuel. Most shredders want to play like John Petrucci. And no one plays like Tommy Emmanuel, and very few people play like John Petrucci. So what are the odds that during med school, you're going to have the time and honestly the focus and talent to achieve the level of two exceptional guitar players? Again, I'm not trying to discourage anyone's dreams, but That is a really, really lofty goal. But again, guitarists in their 40s and 50s, they all already know. In fact, every time someone emails me who's over the age of 30, it usually starts like this. Listen, guitar is my hobby. I really love it. But listen, I already know I'm not going to be insert guitar player. I already know I'm not going to be blah, 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 blah. I want to achieve this goal. Do you think this is possible? And usually the goal is realistic and it's very possible, which again, it's just an easier thing as a teacher. And here is one last thing. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but the last thing that I think is very underrated is that older people have a much easier time celebrating small victories, small wins, small achievements. I can work with a teenager, and in 3, 4, 5 months, I can see that they have made dramatic improvements, and they barely even notice. In my program, a few people have now learned all 7 modes, and they can play through every mode. They understand every mode. They understand how to navigate the prep board. Some of my guys have done that in like 2 or 3 weeks. Others in like 7 or 8 weeks. If you're watching on YouTube, just look on your screen right now. These are all normal adults in the program, people in their 50s, 60s, 30s, and so on. And they're all getting these great results. And also, look on screen. It's not taking them 5 hours a day of practice. We're talking about 15 minutes a day of dedicated practice, the right method, adults, and they can still make amazing progress. But when they talk about their improvement, they are really, really excited. Super excited. And they can easily look back 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago and say, oh my God, I could not do that before. And I can do this now. And again, that might not seem like a big deal, but when it comes to improving at things, when it comes to getting better at things, the ability to look back a week ago or even yesterday and say, wow, I made progress. I'm on the right track. I'm doing good. That's the thing that's going to help you continue to make progress and progress and progress and progress. And that's the thing that's going to keep things exciting and fresh, and it's going to help keep your mindset in the right spot. So yeah, guys, these are some reasons why I think it's better, why it can be more efficient to learn as an adult. We'll end this with a quick analogy to sports. And we'll use fighting sports. Interestingly enough, you'll often see that a young fighter, be it boxing, be it mixed martial arts, they're in their early 20s, 23, 24, and they have all of this physical talent. They're fast, they're powerful, they're agile, they have cardio, they have all of these physical gifts that you get when you're in your 20s. But the thing a lot of them don't have is, well, they often call it fight IQ. They don't have the patience. They don't have the ability to sit back and to not just go crazy in a fight and just throw everything at the person. And it just so happens that as you get older, as you get more experienced in fighting, you often develop this ability to kind of see where things are going, to kind of hang back, and to kind of pick your individual battles to win a fight. And it's this interesting thing that happens where it's like the older people usually have the gift of being more intelligent fighters. The younger people have the gift of being young. And so it'll always be an interesting thing because sometimes you just see a young person who's just so athletically gifted, they just blow past an older person in terms of a fight, and they just come out, they start swinging, they knock them out, and it's done. But every once in a while, you'll see it happen where it's like this young fighter and this old veteran. And that old veteran, they kind of dance around for a while. They kind of put their hands up. They wear out the young guy. And then round 2, round 3, the young guy is all frustrated and tired and worn out. And the old guy takes over and wins. Right? Because they have that intelligence, they have that IQ to kind of hang back to win the long game. And luckily for us, we're not in a fighting sport. We're not in a zero-sum game. There's not just only winner with guitar playing. There are not these giant physical things that you lose as you get older. If you're 40 years old and you have healthy hands and you have a healthy mind, you now have the intelligence, the patience, the life goals, the life experiences of someone who's 40 or 50. And you still have the ability to do something that someone younger would be doing, like playing the guitar. So it would be like if you had a fighter who had the brilliance of a 40-year-old fighter, but the body of, we'll say, a 29, 30-year-old. Not the body of a 20-year-old, but the body of a 29, 30-year-old. There's still a lot of years left in that body. So older guitar players, I love you guys. A lot of guys like you in the program. I'll link it below. I'll talk to you guys soon.